put the paint on this glass ball twice because the first go around is usually not thick enough, and you look at these and you see how thin they are. Well, I'll go back over it again with another stroke, and it has to be in one stroke because if I hit it twice, I'll pick up the paint that's underneath and both of them will come off. And I have to let it dry again and then start over with one stroke of the paint. So I do a bunch of blue, and the paint dries up really fast because it's acrylic. So I just use the lid, and whenever I use this all up, then I get out another paint and paint a little bit of that. And put your brushes in the water if you really don't want to have them dry up so that you can't use it. On this, where I need to wipe off something, just a little bit of a dry brush that has a tiny bit of water won't hurt. There's a lot of different varieties of bluebonnets, and some of them have a rounded leaf on the end, and the other ones have a pointed leaf. Most of them have 5 leaves, but some of them have more than 5.
Oh.
Just depending on where they're growing. They grow in different colors in different sections of Texas. And the people that tell you whether this is original to an area or if there's other varieties around that are the same as this, they say that this Texas bluebonnet is just in Texas.
Really?
There's lupines other places, but the bluebonnet is just a Texas flower. When they were going to choose a Texas flower, Texas state flower, the senators or representatives, I've forgotten exactly which ones were trying to decide, they didn't know anything about a bluebonnet, and different ones were saying, well, the cactus flower, the cotton blossom. Some people had other ideas about what would be a good Texas state flower. And there were ladies sitting up in the balcony that were members of, not the DAR, but some group of ladies that banded together. They all had a very imposing title for their group. They said, what about the bluebonnet? And the men in the Senate didn't know anything about the bluebonnet. And they said, well, wait just a minute. And they ran next door and they got a painting by Miss Maude Walker, who had painted a little picture full of Texas bluebonnets with some primroses. And it was real pretty. Well, anyway, they liked it, and they decided the Texas bluebonnet, and they thought there was one variety. A few years later, they found out there were other varieties, and so they says, well, then these 2 varieties will be our state flower. And then later on, they found out there were maybe 5 or 6. So I've forgotten exactly it's either 5 or 6 varieties. Maybe they've discovered some new ones. I may not know about all of them.
And does it depend on the region where those varieties
The color
are?
does, yes. And out in West Texas, out in the Big Bend country, there's a tall, thin, gangly bluebonnet. It's about 3 feet tall or more even. Real scraggly with the bluebonnets, kind of spaced around the stem, not as a little nice little bouquet like we have them around in our area. And the florists are cultivating those because they last longer and they're very hardy, and they go in bouquets and do very well in their floral arrangements. So they're cultivating them, and I have seen photographs of bouquets with bluebonnets in them, but I've not seen any around here.
When you say different colors of blue?
Yes.
Different shades of blue.
Some of them are more on a lavender color, and the University of A&M, Texas A&M, cultivated a naturally occurring one that looked a little bit maroon. And so they kept cultivating this particular one until they got this color of maroon. And that's the one that they sell, Texas A&M. Haven't been looking for a gray one. No, what's the colors of Texas A&M?
Maroon and white.
Or white, okay. Well, it has white on it. I guess that'll work.
Now tell me again what you were saying about how they when you went out to the bluebonnet farm out at Rogers?
Oh, yes.
And how they seed?
That was so much fun, and I had never seen anything like that. Mr. Lou Crowell and his wife Louise had a bluebonnet farm out from Rogers going towards Buckholz. And he grew seeds, and of course I like bluebonnets, and he told me I could come take photographs or paint or whatever, and so I did. And then they were telling me about when the bluebonnet makes its seed, they gather up some of them, and then the other ones, but when the bluebonnet itself will scatter the bluebonnet's seed by, it pops like a little firecracker. And since it's only one flower, and I don't know however many seeds, each little flower swivels up and makes a certain number of seeds. Well, then they all pop at different times in the hot summer months and throw the seeds about 20 feet away, up to 20 feet. And did you get the part about the white?
No, but I want you to tell me, you heard it, you could hear them, you said.
Oh, yes, you could hear them. They're not loud, but you could hear a little pop.
Isn't that something?
Maybe it would be like popcorn, something like that. I'd love to go out again and experience that.
Now tell me about the white and
The little banner, the little white dots that are on the bluebonnet, whenever I put the dots on here, you'll notice that they're kind of in a diamond pattern, but of course in nature everything can be turned a little bit this way or that way, and you may not see perfect diamond shape, but the stem, flowers go around the stem in a swirl like a barber pole, where each flower is attached. So that makes this one just a little bit lower than the one above it. So you'd have one here, here, and here, and here, and I could start putting some dots on that. This is the banner that says to the honeybee that come get the pollen, it's ready. And when
white.
the white dot, yeah. And then whenever they see the white dot, well, they would land on this little bottom part that's a platform. The platform opens up and the pollen is inside. And when all the pollen is gone, that little white dot will turn red, and it will say to the honeybee, there's no more pollen. Just don't bother. And that's about it. That's that I can, anything of interest that I can think about. In painting them, I just know that you don't want to have a row of, you really don't want this to be one right under the other one, but yet this one would go phase out and this one goes around, but basically.
So you get that coiling effect?
Yes, and basically you get a diamond shape, but then you put all the others in there, you may not see the diamond shape as much, but.
So the diamond shape is the 4 points of those flags?
Right, yeah, these little white dots, that would be your diamond. And then here's the next swirl around. Let me get this down here so I can balance my hand. Well, I haven't put the blue back on this flower. I knew I was waiting on something. I'll still do it. And it kind of gives you a little bit of a off center. I mean, it's just not a line of white dots, in other words. And then the leaves are different on different varieties, and some are rounded. And this is the variety that's rounded, is Texensis, is its name. And if you don't like the way you painted it, you can take just a little bit of a damp brush and wipe it off until you get it just the way you would like it. But I'll be putting another coat of the green and the blue on these. I'm sorry, I'm not keeping it very still.
So this is the second layer. And
I
maybe one more layer?
I didn't do this yet. This is the first layer, and this is the first layer, and it's just a little bit darker than some of them turn out. Some of these are pretty thin looking, and that's the one that I'll go over again. Okay. And this one has not had the second blue put on it, and I'll have to go over it again too. Okay. Now they won't wipe off, but they will scratch off because it's not baked on. It's not a glass paint, it's acrylic, but it'll last a good while if you don't treat them too rough.
Yeah, when I was a kid, we'd always pull back one part of the bonnet
Mm-hmm.
and to look for the cat's claw.
Oh, yes,
On
that's,
that.
that's part of that pollination part.
Is that where that seed
Mhm. That's
ends
where
up?
the seed, no, that's where the pollen is.
For the pollen?
And when the bee lands on it,
Mhm.
it comes open, and you'd pull it apart, and that's where then this little cat's claw would come out, and it has the pollen on it. And the honeybee's legs are there with all the little pollen receptors and hairs or whatever it is that they
Mhm.
put the pollen on.
So that the weight of the bee kind of opens it up?
It does.
Oh,
Mhm.
kind of a
Well,
magical
that's-
little flower.
It
isn't
really is a marvelous plan that I think that how God had different plans for even each flower, and everything has its own way of blooming and reproducing. It just is amazing.
Hmm. Are there similar flowers in other parts of the world, like in Europe, or?
I think probably the lupine is found in other parts of the world, but it's still different. There's something different about it that makes the Texas bluebonnet just well, I don't know the word.
Unique.
Only in Texas.
Huh.
Sure, it could
Yeah.
grow somewhere else if you planted it, I guess, but
Mhm.
I-
Not native.
It's not native. Maybe that's the
Yeah.
word. Yeah, the native part. And they said it was the people that wrote this book that I read many years ago, and I don't remember who wrote it. Found out that it was just only found in Texas.
How did you first get interested in bluebonnets?
I don't know. I just liked them. I just always thought that they were fun, pretty flower. I just was fascinated with them when I'd see them coming up, and I didn't know anything about them. And then I got a book at the library and read the things that some of the things that I'm telling you about how they chose it as a state flower. And I copied her painting, by the way, and wrote the history of the bluebonnet on the back, and so that I could remember it and get it right if I was going to tell somebody. But I don't have it with me. Okay, I have to let this dry.
I remember as a young girl, I guess in school, learning about the other state flowers, and I always thought we were lucky because we had I thought, the best one.
I think so. I think this is the prettiest one. Really, there's other nice flowers as far as that goes, but I like this one. Well, I think I better do the white. It dries up so fast, I don't want to waste this. I'll just do a few more with the tops.
I grew up playing on my grandparents' farm out at Maysfield between Cameron and Hearn. And I remember we'd always go out to look at the bluebonnets. And one year we came up over a little hill, little rise, and we looked down, and this whole pasture was bluebonnets, and it was so solid. I thought it was water at first.
I think it's very easily mistaken for water.
It's so pretty.
Oh, it really is.
They can get so thick on certain years.
I didn't know that the bluebonnet had such a nice fragrance until I experienced a big bunch of them. And so you could really pick it up. It's so delicate. And
I can't remember smelling.
somebody made a bluebonnet candle, and they had the bluebonnet fragrance in it, and it just smelled so good. And then I was able to pick up that fragrance, but it's just so hard to smell. Really is. I mean, it's just not enough
Very
of it.
delicate.
It's not. Yeah, it's just not a strong, overpowering smell.
That's kind of like our native violets, those little
Do they
forest
have a-
violets. Yes, when I was in high school,
Oh.
I had a project, and it was a photography project, so I thought I'd make perfume out of them, because on real humid nights, I could smell them in my mother's flower bed.
Oh,
And I
didn't know
loved that little smell.
Yeah.
But they were too delicate, it was just.
Oh. I tried to make rose perfume one time, followed a recipe I found in some magazine, and had all the rose petals I could find around in everybody's gardens and didn't make
It's hard to
anything at all.
It's
No.
hard to do.
It's
It's
a
a
lot harder.
process and takes
Mhm.
days and.
There's a lot more to it than just crushing up the rose petals.
There is.
I don't know what it is either.
Did, what family, what genus is this
I don't know.
from? Wonder if it's anywhere related to like gladiolas or those other kind of stalk
I
flowers.
was trying to remember. I know it's close to the lupine, but I don't know if it's a family of so many. What is it by the leaves? So many leaves, or where the leaves are placed on the stem that they decide about different.
I don't know.
It's
I
been
don't-
too long
yeah,
since
me
I've been in
too. I haven't-
school.
Me too.
But there used to be something about if the leaf was opposite each other, up and down the stem, it had one name. And if it was staggered down this stem, it had another name.
I have forgotten those names.
I remember that, only that part
Yeah,
of it, but
yeah.
there's something else about the names of a lot of plants, and I just forgot the part that's real important maybe as to what kind it is and the genus and all of the different scientific.
Now, there's a legend of the bluebonnet, isn't there? What's the
The
legend?
Indians had a legend of it. I'm not certain about the legend. It had to do with some lady in blue.
I know, I can't remember. I was just trying to remember. We'll have to do some Googling.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, how pretty.
I still have to put some more blue on it. But I thought while I had the white out, I would go ahead and paint the white part. When they first come up, it's just the little white parts, but each one of those little white areas turns into a bluebonnet as it grows up the stem, and then it'll have the white on it, and then they finally quit growing, do as much as they're going to, and then each one of those would be a bluebonnet more or less and turn into seed.
So is it like the bud, the white part?
It would be a bud. I think that would be a good name for it.
I haven't looked at them that close to think of them.
Some of them are open up, they spread out a little bit more, the white part does, as it grows, and just before it's one petal on top of the other petal, and when the top petal opens up, well then this is the bottom part that's left, and then the top part has the white banner on it. And, but then it'll continue to grow, and then these will all turn into bluebonnets, and it gets a certain height they'll all turn to seed eventually, but they just take turns. Okay, I need some more paint.